Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's episode of HR Mentorship Learning Series. My name is Oluyemi Adeosho, and tonight we will be looking at the topic Strategic Human Resource Business Partnering, focusing on predictive analytics in recruitment, attrition, and performance. And our facilitator for tonight is Ujunwa Somto Chukwu, whom I'm always happy to have her on this platform. Ujunwa is a strategic HR business entrepreneur, certified change practitioner, culture and transformational leader with over 16 years of progressive experience across diverse industries, including manufacturing, oil and gas, IT, digital payment solutions, real estate, mining, and logistics. She is currently the country head of People and Business Partnering and Administration at GDCT. She has led impactful workforce transformation and culture initiatives across Middle East and Africa. She holds a Bachelor's of Science in Economics from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and a Master's in Human Resource Management from University of Derby, United Kingdom. She has several certifications, including membership of Talents or Personal Management, Nigerian Institute of Training and Development, Senior Professional Human Resource International, and so on and so forth. Speaking to us tonight on the topic Strategic HRBP, Predictive Analytics in Recruitment, Attrition, and Performance. Please let's welcome Ujunwa. Over to you, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. I hope we had a good day. Thank you. All right, this session is titled Strategic Human Resource Business Partner, Predictive Analysis in Recruitment, Attrition, and Performance. And I added a subtitle that says From HR Data to HR Foresight, Anticipating Talent Outcome Before they happen. And that word, foresight, is the heart of everything we are going to cover today. Because the truth remains that most organizations are using HR data to explain the past. But today we are going to learn how to use it to shape the future, not as a technology topic, but as something we can use to convince our leaders and speak the language to business to the language. What will be the learning outcome for today? Hold on, please. The learning outcome today is centered on 5 things. We are going to understand and confidently communicate core predictive HR analytic concepts to stakeholders. And then we are going to interpret complex workforce data outputs and translate them into actionable business decisions. And then we learn how to apply predictive thinking across 3 core domains of HR: recruitment, attrition, and performance. And then the ethical governance of those of using those analytics in such a way that it will be relevant for the organization without causing harm to our businesses. And finally, the understanding of this predictive analysis positions us as strategic business partners to our C-suite. Let's understand what the data is saying. All right, 75 companies, 75%, this is according to SHRM, 75% of the organization rank people analytics as high priority, which means that it's important to them to make business decisions. However, 9 believes that there is no strong correlation between what we are offering as analytics and the impact on business. And then 25% of our organization, this too is coming from Deloitte, higher productivity in organizations, higher productive organizations deploy people analytics. And then the last one talks about this hire, the cost of 200% cost of this hire. When we use our intuitive without using data. Before we proceed, let's look at 4 levels of HR analytics. The first one is descriptive. So we need to understand where we are starting from because analytics is a journey. And if it is a journey, so we need to know the roadmap from where we are and where we are going to. If the first one is descriptive, it's telling us what is happening today. So we are saying an annual attrition is 18%. We are saying performance rating, impact of performance is 62%. We are saying the engagement survey, we have 70% engagement survey, and probably time to hire is 47. So we are just describing what is happening using data. The next one, we move to diagnostic. So we are saying what did happen, and we are asking those recruitment exit interviews that we are using to decide what happened. What is the exit interview saying about the career growth? What is it saying about engagement? What is it saying? What is our reports from hiring reports, whatever it is that we do, the rate of absenteeism, what is it saying? It still talks about the past. So we are still looking at the rear view. Now, when we move to predictive, we are asking what is likely to happen. And that is where HR business partnership happens. So we are saying for people that are leaving, before now, what are the patterns that they are showing? What would have caused them to leave? What are those trends or patterns we see? And those people that are succeeding in the roles we've hired, what are the trends we see during hiring? Those organizations, well, which recruitment agency are they coming from? Which university are they coming from? So we are now reading those reports to better inform us of what is going to happen within the next 6 to 18 months. Then the last one is prescriptive. Now you know what is going to happen. Now you know the insights. What are you doing with it? What are the measures you're putting in place for someone you found out that he's exhibiting this trend, is exhibiting this pattern as a high potential? What are you putting in place for him or her to prosper or to grow in his career and stay engaged in the business? So, and this is where HR as an intelligent function works most for organizations. And this is where we ought to be as business partners. Okay, let's look at the concepts before we move into those core 3 areas, the recruitment, attrition, and performance. Let's look at some languages of predictive analytics. Now, if a salesperson enters a boardroom, right, there are some languages they speak. They predict, they tell you what happens and what will happen. Now, for us, the truth remains that one of the reasons we barely engage as HR business professionals in analytics is not because we don't have interest. It's because maybe of the language, and we don't understand the terms like logistic regression, survival analysis, random forest, all those languages that comes with predictive analytics. However, the goal today is for us to break them down and use those language that concern us as HR business partners. So for each one I mentioned, I try to explain it in lay HR terms for us to understand. And I have 6 of them here. Now, I start with attrition risk modeling. What does it mean? Technically, it's algorithm, right? Algorithm that tells us the pattern that precedes past employees, the past show, and how we can use those patterns to use it as warning signs for today. So when employees are exhibiting those warning signs, we know that something, resignation, exit is coming close. The second one would be candidate success prediction. Now, I'll call it regression-based modeling. Why did I say so? It helps us to study the best hires. We look at our employees that are working in our organization. What are the ones that are performing high? We study the pattern we used to hire them, and then use it as a blueprint to evaluate future candidates' objectivity. Patterns like, where is this candidate coming from? During the interview, what are those attributes he exhibited? Along the line, we look at it as well. The third one would be performance trajectory forecasting. And this one is time series. When I mean time series, we are looking at those early signs between top performers. Those early signs that when someone starts dropping, the performance starts dropping, would know that this high talent is struggling in the business, right? So the performance is actually dropping. And then we look at workforce segmentation. What does this say? It's clustering. So this time around, we are dividing our workforce into meaningful groups, not just by gender or job titles, but their needs, their risk, their potential, so that we as HR people can give targeted interventions on them. When we use people review, we tend to understand our high performers, low performers, those categories, those clustering, that is it. And then we look at leading and lagging indicators. Lagging tells us that fire has happened. Fire has started, has already happened. Whereas leading tells us that smoke is coming and it will lead to fire. So let's, for instance, say that a decline in engagement from a talented employee is a leading indicator that something is about to happen. You see that employee that used to do a lot of things, get involved, along the line, start withdrawing. Those are leading indicators. And then the next one is talent risk indicators. And these are warning signs that is embedded on our data, like career progression, decline in feedback scores, or deteriorating line managers. When line managers are finding it difficult to cope, start getting bad reviews on line managers. And then the last but not the least is what I call predictive validity. Now we've tested all those concepts. We have those surveys. Predictive validity tells us that if this data is in place and it's not giving us the right thing, which means our tool, the tool we are using to do it, is not reliable enough. If for several times we say that the right candidate is coming from this agency or this school, and along the line it's not happening, which means that the tool we are using to do, or the data or the information we are using to predict the success, is no longer reliable. And what does this say to us as HR professionals? It says that precision is not cosmetics. We need to earn our credibility if we learn how to use this language, just like salespeople, finance people. All right, let me move to data foundation, because the data foundation informs how we build analytics. So one thing, the people that vendors, our technology vendors, those organizations we buy our HRIS, all those vendors, Seamless and the likes of it, what they will not tell us, what is not written in our brochures is that whatever it is we give to our system is what it brings. So what am I saying? That the quality of a data, of an information or prediction, the success of a tool is prediction, the ideas, whatever it is that we are using that tool to do is dependent on the information, the quality of the data we are providing. Garbage in, garbage out. So it means that hiring decisions that we make mistakes, hire the wrong people, has a lot to do with flawed data we imputed on our system. And this leads us to 4 key dimensions of data quality. The first one is accuracy. Does the data actually reflect reality? A performance rating that is incorrectly entered that records the reason for someone to leave as personal, whereas the core reason is management conflict, manager conflict, is giving us the wrong information. You know, when you send exit survey and between the employee, within the employee, he knows the reason why he's leaving the organization is because his manager is terrible. And then he writes personal. That's lack of accuracy. And for our predictive analysis to be very successful and yield results, we need to get the accurate data. The second one is completeness. Our critical gaps we presented, you see, we do employee survey, whatever survey we have, and we get less than 72 or 82, like recognized standard, giving you just 60%. It means that there is a high possibility that the high risk, that 40% has a core impact on the business, which means that we are not dealing with the right data. The 60% we actually got covered might not reveal the right information we need. So as much as possible, we need to ensure we have complete data. And then we look at consistency. We have, what instance am I going to use? Uniform collection across organizations. So we say, let's do internal customer survey, department by department. Finance is rating 1 to 5. HR is rating 1 to 10. When we compute those results, there are so many inconsistencies that we find it difficult to use it to make business decisions. So what am I saying? If we are using ratings from 1 to 5, it should be across board. If you are doing 1 to 3, it should be across board. If you are doing 1 to 10, it should be across board. That's an instance. And then most importantly, timeliness. And in this timeliness, I'm going to use our present performance management that always tells us what has happened in January. So we call it recency error or past errors, all those errors that comes with our performance and management, giving us information that has happened in the past. So our predictive intelligence is as important and rich as the data we feed in it. And for me, we need, as HR professionals, business partners, we need 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 core areas for sources. There are more, but this one will give us information we need to make all the business decisions. Later on, we'll talk about the ones that has to do with relational. We have the HR system, core HR system that speaks to tenure, role, history, and compensation. We have the performance management, which that speaks to goal completion, and we have different engagements of the platforms. on what you're trying to find out. That speaks to the applicant tracking system that gives us information where we are sourcing our candidates and the assessment scores. And then the last but not the least is exit interview, of which we are now pre-stay interview. Let's find out what happens, what would happen before it happens. Let's move into the core areas we are going to focus on, having understand these concepts and foundations of gathering data. So let's look at recruitment. What is predictive recruitment all about? I'm giving you a scenario, right? A hiring manager interviews 3 candidates. The first one has impressive CV and can speak English, unlike me, during interview, and carries himself with confidence. And then you have the second one that slightly polished his CV, but gives thoughtful and evidence-based response. And then you have the third one that studied the company and have insights, asking the right questions as it pertains to the job the person is coming. Now, at the end of the interview, the hiring manager picks the first candidate. From give and take 9 months, the candidate has resigned. The cost of hiring the candidate has gone like that, because the interview process is strictly based on intuition and does not have a set of data that reveals that is evidence-based. Now, one thing about predictive recruitment is that it doesn't reduce people to just data points. It answers 4 specific questions. So it gives us ground to use evidence-based hiring. Hiring that based on those grading systems and the analysis and the inputs and the data we've gathered, we can make decisions that this candidate. So it answers 4 questions. The first one is which candidate. The second one will be what sourcing channel produced our highest performing hires. And then the third one would be what pre-hired characteristics predict long-term retention. And then the last one would be which candidate has the highest probability of becoming future leaders. So for each question, it has historically answered and cleared the intuition, because predictive recruitment gives us the data that makes it measurable and significant. And that is what predictive recruitment answered. So the goal of predictive recruitment is simple. We are not hiring for today, we are hiring for tomorrow. Let's look at the difference between traditional and predictive approach to hiring model. Everything I've said in the past, all I'm saying is traditional recruitment has to do with I think, I feel, I believe. It's not data driven. So we see CV, we have interview impression, whereas on the other hand, predictive drives candidate success profile. Why? Because we've already outlisted those criteria that when we tick the box, this candidate is the right candidate for us. We are posting vacancies everywhere instead of focusing our energy to those channels that we have proven return on investment. So you know that when you use this source, you get the right candidate. Yet you keep posting, but because you don't have data, we keep posting everywhere, and then we don't have structured conversation and what we call scoring rubric, or those behaviors that when a candidate is exhibiting during interview, we know that this particular candidate is not for us. And then we look at the retention per hire, long-term fit explicit model, and structured, reduced, standardized scoring. This is coming from those criteria we have listed ahead of the interview, that this is what success looks like for this candidate. So we are aware and we are not biased, because we have all the hiring managers, all the interview team has the right information to pick the right candidate. Before I move to the next slide, I would want to speak to 5 steps on how we can actually build this capacity without waiting for data scientists to come and do it for us. The first one would be, let's define what success for this role means to us. So we are saying this role within the next 2, 3, 4 years, what performance threshold defines that this candidate is successful, that we have the right candidates in our team. And the second point would be, we are analyzing the past hire. Remember what I said, you have teams, colleagues in your employees that are doing well. You review how you've brought them in, the sources they are coming from, and you build based on that, putting similarities or similar format or prototype of what defines success of those people you have in distinct performing well. And then you identify 5 to 7 strongest variables that will be tied to their KPIs or what will be their evaluation framework. The fourth one would be to build strong scoring framework. You have the JD, and there are unnegotiable skills that when you look at, it builds the evaluation, the framework to score the candidate. The candidate has this based on the core requirement for this role. You take it based on that. That is what I mean by scoring framework. The last but not the least is to validate, always validate those outcomes, those tools we put in place to bring in new candidates, to hire new candidates, to recruit new candidates, to make sure that it keeps building business results. We move to attrition. All right. If there is one thing I've learned over the years, is that resignation of employee is not an event, it's not a moment. It started like few weeks, months before it happened, right? And sometimes it takes more than 6 months. So during those withdrawal period, there are some behaviors that those candidates or those employees show, like low engagement, absenteeism, performance starts dropping. And if we have a predictive analytics in place, it will bring up those behaviors before the resignation letter arrives. And this is it. Between that window where the employee starts maybe showing those signs and the letter arriving, that week is when we as HR business partners steps in, if only we have predictive analytics in place. So with predictive analytics in place to manage attrition, we are not asking the question, why do employees leave? They are saying, what does the data say before they decide to leave? And what did we do about it? Because most organizations that underestimate the true cost of attrition are the ones that accounts for direct replacement significantly. It's not about the person leaving, it's about the cost of this attrition. Because research has shown that it's way cheaper to retain employees than to replace them. So our goal as HR professionals is to do everything within our means using predictive analytics to find out before the resignation drops. Let's look at attrition factors framework. What are the actual signals that consistently predict voluntary departure? We have categorized it into 4. We have the structural, we have the relational, and we have the developmental and workload well-being. The structural has to do with systems, those foundations, maybe tenure stage, somebody that has stayed after 2 years. Research actually shows that after 2 years of employment, the employee moves to a high risk zone, looking around of where to go to. And so if as HR business partners, we don't get hold of those employees, more especially when they are our high performing team members, which means the foundation or the structure has challenges. And then we look at promotion stagnation, 3 years in the system, no promotion. Those ones are structural challenges. And then we look at compensation gap. Research has it that any compensation that is less than 10% of the market rate risk losing their employees to competitive markets. And this one speaks to structural framework that causes increases the risk of attrition. We look at relational. Relational has to do with line managers. When we gather information and we find out that a particular department, the employees there, the rate of attrition is high, we may need to start focusing on the manager, because even when they say personal, without revealing that it's their manager or they had managerial relationship, we need to look deep and find out what the problem is. I used to have that issue in the past with my sales team, but this time around, it wasn't about relationship. It was about the structure of our sales team. The attrition rate was high, and this led me further into finding something that has to do with the pricing system. And then we look at team turnover contagion. What do I mean by that? When a particular department, after employees have built bonds and they keep on leaving, it has 40% probability of affecting the remaining employees to start looking around to leave. And then we have peer recognition deficit. Teams having issues with each other, having problems within the team. Most of the time, it has to do with leadership of that team. So these ones talks about the relationship risk of attrition. And then we have the developmental one. We have organizations where there's no learning and development, no career growth, nothing. They don't do training. There is no growth. Later on, we'll speak to the next. I think the next slide speaks to how we can manage all this attrition. And we can only find out this attrition because we have a predictive model in place to reveal these issues. Otherwise, we'll stay in our own assumption and intuition. And then we look at workload and well-being. When you have people depression, you have high rate of absenteeism, you have sickness and recurring sick leave because people are burnt out, people slumping in the organization out of work, the cost of HMO increasing because of high usage and the likes of it. It might be signaling workload and well-being. But let me say one thing. One of these does not make up this whole thing. It's a combination, because one variable cannot bring about attrition. It's a combination of one or two or three, more than two of these that leads to attrition. And we can only find out when we have a predictive model in place to monitor those signs and signals. Let's look at how interventions we can use for this risk I mentioned in the last slide. And just for your information, this is strictly based on personal experience, and that has worked for me in the past. Now, when we look at attrition rate that is caused by development and career stagnation, we need to have conversation. Now, the conversation is not stay. Please don't go, stay. Yeah, we need to sit down with the employee and have conversations around exactly what they want, plot it in a paper and see how it was. But let me mention most importantly that if you recall, I said clusters of employees. So we have an intervention targeted on them. All these interventions is not for all employees. They are for our high performers and people along the line that has the attributes that our predictive tools have shown signs that this is a high potential, but along the line, something happens. So this intervention is targeted on these people. Why? Because the cost of retaining employees is cheaper than the cost of replacing them. And we must be proactive and not reactive. This is what predictive analysis helps us do. So we need to have those conversations, not to offer counter offer. We just have to sit down and genuinely care for them, have discussion to address the causes of their problem. We can use accelerated internal mobility. What do I mean by this? I know most of the organizations has lean structure. And in those lean structure, we can find roles that allows people to get involved in projects beyond their day-to-day jobs. So this way they can feel engaged and feel useful. And for most of us that work in multinational, you can find global projects, get your team involved, create the awareness within the team to make them feel growth is happening beyond just what they do on a daily basis. We can also, still on development and career, we can look at targeted mentoring and sponsorship. And this is one of the things I pride myself for doing in my organization, where you have to create mentorship. Let the employees feel free to say, this is the people I admire within the organization, and I would love them to mentor me. Why? Because those mentorships goes beyond mentoring to create sponsorship and let the mentors understand what their mentees are capable of doing and what they look out for, so that when such opportunity comes, they would recognize and nominate them. And when it comes to relational attrition risk that has to do with relational and managerial, we can use managerial coaching and accountability. What do I mean by this? We found out that this manager has challenges, has managerial issues. People within his team keeps leaving. We have to intervene with coaching, and it could be internal, it could be external. Bring in coach, because most of the time, those things with the managers think they are. Let me put it this way, there is a big gap between the baby boomers, the millennials, and the Gen Z. And what seems right for us might not, for the baby boomers, might not seem right for Gen Z. So we need coaches to coach our line managers to bring to their attention what is trending and what is no longer booked, so that the rate of attrition within the team will reduce. And then accountability. And this comes in the form of maybe tying attrition rates to the line manager, just to make sure that the line manager owns it. Move it from HR out and move it to the line manager, because you cannot always be chasing out your employees and keep sending me back inside the market. And when I mean accountability, just find a way to get the line manager accountable for his action. And then we use team culture diagnosis. And this has to do with scenarios where employees within the same team keep having issues like reporting information, working in silos, and all those things. You need to have you need to diagnose what is happening in the team. And this can only happen when external team reviews them, and then they review themselves, have conversations with them outside their line managers, have conversations with their line managers to understand what is actually happening. You necessarily don't need to use tools there, because it has to do with relationships. So we need human touch to it. That we'll discuss towards the end of this session, to know how to manage tools and the human aspect of HR. And then the last one has to do with structural and compensationary. What do I mean by this? All those attrition rates that has to do with structure and compensation. We need to review our compensation. We balance our workload and look for wellness support systems in place. And when we are doing compensation review, it should be across board. Because if we have predictive analytics model in the system, we should know that it's not just that employee system. It still goes back to the structural issue we are trying to resolve. All right, the next slide talks to predictive performance management. This is an interesting one. Why is it interesting? Because most of our performance management tools talks about the past, our annual reviews, what has happened, what will happen. So I want to ask us something. When was the last time you sat in performance review and you're giving or receiving a feedback on something that has to do with future potential? If not, last year you did this, you did that, and because of business, your performance between, and that is what we call traditional performance management. It's basically not our fault, but the truth remains that it's designed in such a way that it treats what has happened in the past. Now, our role as HR professionals is to use the data it provides for us to study what is happening in the future or what would happen in the future, and use it as a trend, read the patterns, to use it to make more business decisions. So for this employee, this is what the performance review for the past 3 years has happened, saved. And over these years, this is what is. So it's more or less, we can use it to read patterns and actually find information. So what exactly does predictive performance intelligence framework does for us? It changes the fundamental orientation. Instead of measuring what has happened, it focuses of what is likely to happen. So instead of asking what did the person perform in the past, it's asking what does this person's current behavior data tells us about what it's going to do in the future. So it shifts it in 3 objectives. It helps us to identify early future performance. as they are consistently performing, we use it as a leading indicator to find out the people we need to invest in for future. That is how we can use our performance intelligence framework. The second one is that proactively manage risk of performance. What do I mean by that? For people that monitor that people don't start getting disengaged or people start withdrawing. So you would say that last year this employee did well. So this year, what has happened? What triggered it? And then you dig further to find out why the person is not performing. And that is how we can use our performance framework to decide for the future. And then the last one would be objective potential assessment. Now, this is what our current performance doesn't have, because most of the times it subjects most of the data to line managers. So we need to find a way on how our performance will go beyond line managers to actually identify those employees that are good within our system, but because of maybe line managers' oversight, they are not meeting. This is what we need to work to find out how we can do it in our current performance. So in my current organization, have we managed this? We are trying something out, what we call we moved our feedback reviews, performance reviews to feedback sessions, where the system prompts us to have discussions of what is currently happening, and it opens space for us not to wait till end of the year to discuss. And then for every issue that the employee is not okay based on the feedback, it triggers, the employee could take it to the next level by saying, I disagree with this point, so that the next line manager can have an oversight and have a discussion around it. It's still a problem, a test in place, but we as organization, we as business partners, HR business partners, we need to find a way to move out our employees out of those controlling or manipulating line managers and start seeing what employees. Because one thing I've noticed is that when an employee is good, the line manager feels reluctant and feels reluctant to release him, and he keeps in that place. So we need to equally train our line managers to understand these behaviors and learn to know that most employees leave because there is too good for them, and help them to open up space for the employees to in their teams to grow. Let's look at what we have now as 9 boss evolution. We have the performance versus the potential risk. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't work. What I'm saying is that we need to use it right. Instead of waiting till the end of the year, we need to have that discussion as it's going and keep it as a record. With the use of AI, I'm hoping that we'll get to a level where all those, because what we are seeing now, mostly on recruitment, interventions are on recruitment. But I'm looking at a scenario where AI would decide, give you input based on line managers' reports, data reports on your workforce, and fish out those trends, those patterns we need to use to make core decisions. And then back to the 9 box tool. The aspect of potential metrics has the predictive analytics potential tool, if only we would separate it from performance review. Those potential, the metrics, we need to separate it from the performance aspect and have those discussions. We in our organization, we call it people review, and it's different from performance review. We sit as line managers, have a calibration session, not performance calibration sessions, where we discuss the heads of department. We sit and bring out, show it on the dashboard, always discussing. So what is the need for this guy? He's on this line box. Have a discussion with him as line manager. Reach out to HR. What's the product? What is his career potential? Like, what is he looking out for? And put up a training to make sure that the employee stays engaged. So what am I saying? That it doesn't replace human judgment, but we need to find a way to use what we have to predict the future and manage our workforce of the future. Now, leading indicators of high performance. So when you sit in your team, what are those core things in your organization that you say these are those indicators that, as someone that has a knowledge of predictive analytics, these are the behaviors of people, employees that are high performers? Because your understanding of those indicators makes you helps you to focus interventions on those core roles. When you see an employee that voluntarily gives to learning without you forcing him, so there is this learning assigned to them, goes beyond what is being assigned to them, and take up more trainings. And where do we find this data? Remember those core data that we need as HR business partners. Where do we find this data? We find it on our learning management system. Those employees that take their time to learn. And then that reminds me of a scenario where in my former life, you see business leaders, when the score for learning comes out, the high performance, if you're trying to celebrate them, you see line managers making side hustle. It's because he doesn't have time. That is why he's busy learning. We need to eradicate such mindset from our line managers. Because if our employees don't learn, we don't stay trendy. We don't innovate. So those information, if your learning management system does not help you celebrate top learners in the organization, you might be losing out on key performers in your team. Because if they're able to achieve their targets and still meet up their learning, it shows that they have the skills to take up more. They have the capacity to take up more roles. Employees that get themselves involved in cross-functional projects has the capacity to be leaders in the future, which means they are exhibiting skills of high performance. And where do we get those information? When there is projects within the organization, we find out that beyond the jobs we've assigned to them, they get those projects beyond their job roles and get them done. And how do you take note of this? When you want to reward those people, you reward them beyond their KPIs, beyond their daily job, because they went above and beyond their jobs to do more. This is how we use predictive analysis to get leading indicators of high performance. And then we have frequent high feedback frequency and reception. People that always ask for feedback after session. What do you think about my performance? They always seek for people to give them areas of improvement. Watch out for these employees. We have goal process trend midline. So people that meet their goals, they stay consistent. The way they are performing in January is the way they are performing in June, July, the same way they are performing towards the end of the year, making sure that they are not dropping the ball at any point in time. And then those employees that their colleagues would always say, thank you, Tolu, thank you, Shola, for your support. If not for your support, I wouldn't have completed those projects. Watch out for those employees. And then those employees that goes beyond the elements to get additional roles for those. And those ones are indicating leading indicators of high performance. within our system. Now, let's talk about bridging the gap between data interpretation. So far, we've talked about understanding predictive analytics through the terms, the concepts. We've talked about data foundation, how to get the right data. And we've looked at recruitment, we've looked at attrition, and we've looked at performance. Now let's talk about the principles of data interpretation. How do we bridge the gap as HR professionals? When as HR professionals, we get information, it's a different thing to have the information, and it's another thing to use it in workforce. And this gap is what I call interpretation gap. It is the space between what the data says and what we as HR professionals are actually doing with it. And if we need to close the gap, we are not supposed to function. We are not expected actually to function like statistics or data scientists, or we need to have 5 principles. We need to start looking at those patterns. We need to start looking at those behaviors. Like me, how close I am to top performance in my organization. I know when one person is pulling out, when the next person is behaving. We don't just dispatch tools, surveys, and get them. We need to interpret those actions, and beyond seeing those patterns, work on them. We need to ask the right questions. Now, we shouldn't be asking who resigned. We should be asking what size are those employees that left, what combinations of risk signals are they showing before they start leaving. Off our head, we should know, based on the patterns, based on our models, those behaviors that shows that a high-performing employee is no longer active, which means quiet resignation is about to happen. And now, like I mentioned earlier, we don't just deploy tools, we need to bring human judgment. Beyond what the data is saying, we need to have conversations, bring in our human to determine how. Because if the data is saying data sense, career stagnation, no promotion, salary increment and the like, we could have actually increased the salary. But we need to have the discussion between the employee, especially when they are our high performers, and understand what exactly is the problem so that we can administer the right intervention. And then we need to focus on those areas that we can action. Yes, all the data are okay, but we need to focus on those ones that need urgent intervention, those we can translate into business. And then last but not the least, this is very important to make sure that we stay aligned. We need to keep reviewing our data, asking if actually it's reflecting the workforce we are building and the workforce of the future, if it's addressing our business needs. So at every point in time, the business is changing, the business strategy is changing. We need to review all those models to make sure that it's actually aligning with our business. Let's look at the next slide. And this is what I call them toolkits for interpreting data. So we are looking at what data was included and where is it coming from. Every predictive model is only as complete as the information where it's being pulled from. So we need to ask who is giving the data, where is the data coming from, what was included, what was excluded. We need to ask how current is the data we are using. If we are looking at I'll still go back to our performance module, performance management module. So we need to, if we are addressing issues, trying to deal with, be proactive and looking at what to do in July, we shouldn't be focusing all our energy on what performance of January last year is talking about. Those ones are the basis, but we need to go beyond that to understand more. And that is where I will always say human intervention comes. All those information, what have we used it for? The third one would be, what is the model historical prediction accuracy? We've used this in the past. Has it been reliable? Has it helped us so far? And then we look at the demographics, especially in recruitment, to make sure that some genders or some people are not left, or some regions are not left out, to make sure that we detect early biases on time. The fifth would be, what specific decision will this insight inform? It's okay to gather data, but let's gather information that we'll use to make business decisions. So you can't be asking for time and attendance in the tech industry when you know that most of the jobs are strictly based on tax. So what matters is maybe you dish the time and performance, all those information, and look at performance tool, collaborative tool board to understand what is happening instead of time and attendance. The last but not the least is, who has reviewed this output for ethical and fairness bias implications? Governance. We need to have our data privacy. We need to have our compliance team, legal team, making sure that all the information we are reviewing does not go against code of conduct, compliance, or ethical, ensuring fairness at all levels. Second to the last slide is building an analytic-driven culture. What do I mean by this? We've all talked about the framework, we've talked about the tools we can use, but you and I know that if we don't have a culture that encourages data gathering or use of data, it becomes difficult for us to actually work with those data. We need to go to the level of providing psychological safety, where employees would know that the information they are providing for us is not for us to harm them, but for us to use it to enable the work environment. We are not punishing them or based on, so people will be free to communicate and free to put, for instance, we keep getting employee surveys of different angles, but we don't use them, we don't action them. We are killing the morale of people, that employees are actually taking their time to fill those if we don't action the feedback we get from them. Leadership modeling. Executives should visually, one thing I learned is that when we say that we are deploying this tool or we are deploying this survey, it should be announced. It should be, the leadership should be the ones to announce it and communicate it to the employee, just to show their buy-in. And most importantly, we as HR business partners, we need to be trendy in the use of data, right? We need to learn how to upskill ourselves so we can understand those data. Beyond understanding them, put it in use it to translate, solve business problems, and then build a governance around it, make the source transparent and accurate, quality, and ethical standards. So what are the trends we as HR business partners should look out for? Generative AI in data, in talent intelligence. while we are waiting for our different organizations to start using tools and the likes, we need to upgrade ourselves in the use of generative AI to make the business decisions. The other day, we are looking at softwares that can pull 50 CVs, 100 CVs and analyze them. While your system is waiting for that, you can use build your own platform using either Google and put the security settings. CVs are it's always out there. Build the scoring framework, build the talent areas of focus, key areas, key skills and competency, and use them to make hiring decision. Likewise, succession planning integrated into data, but that of succession planning, you cannot use tools outside the organization. You have to use tools because of data governance. Real-time workforce sensing. So continuous learning, using those reports we keep getting, whether by conversation or by surveys, to keep improving our workforce and making it a better place. And then this predictive work planning as a skill. I'm saying this and I hope to learn how to manage in a larger scale, because currently I have a staff strength that is below 200. And maybe we have to build that capacity to manage it in a long, in a large scale, this predictive workforce, and make sure that for all those business partners we have reporting to us, they have this sense and have the capacity to predict, focus, read what the data is saying, and actually use it to make business decisions. And most importantly, integrate people business analytics. So revenue per employee, customer satisfaction, psychological safety, all those things are what we need to build into our business. And what I mean by revenue, revenue per hire, is it helps us to say, at the cost of this, if we are employing this employee, this is the additional revenue it's bringing to our business. And knowing when not to hire to be called, so it doesn't become cumbersome for our finance or our groups, P&L, like we call it. All right, this is the last slide for me today. And so from it's a summary of all we have done today. So from administrative, we need to be strategic and architecture. Reactive, we need to start being proactive, using evidence-based instead of using our intuition to make decisions, and then have people business intelligence. So we know that this aspect of employee affects this aspect of business. Translating those people analytics into our business. And then the last layer is analytic literacy. So this is just the last slide, putting together all we have studied today. And I know I'm open for your questions. Am I still with you guys, or have you left me?
No, we're still with you.
Yeah. Today's slide is slides are a bit long. So I have to rush it. So feel free to ask your questions if you have any.
Thank you very much, and good evening all. Thank you. It was an insightful section. I just have one question to ask. We're talking about predictive to predict attrition. When all signals that is showing that, yeah, someone is about to leave, you've gotten all the signals, you've got the information, and that's very, maybe during your exit interview for others, it's still the same thing. And you've communicated same to the management when it comes to comp and ben, and they are not doing anything about it. Maybe they will tell you, no matter how much you pay, people will still leave. And people are leaving because of that benefit that is not that competitive in the industry. They are getting something better. What can you do as an HR? You know that this is something you cannot on your own do. The management have refused to do anything about the compensation and benefit. What can you do on your own to still make sure that you retain that talent if it's a high potential or a high performer? What do you do?
If all the employee needs is compensation and it's not coming, there is nothing you can do. But if there are other things he needs that money cannot buy, maybe you can consider flexible working hours, making it a bit less cumbersome for the person. Maybe if the person is traveling to come to work, finding ways to reduce costs for the person so the person can have more to take home. It's understandable. But if it's compensation, you can't bring out money. I used to tell my business leaders then in the past that you have turned your workplace to a learning field where people will join, learn, and grow. Now we equally need to understand what strategy are they driving. Do they care about the employee or they care about the profit? It saves you the stress. It just helps you build talent pool or kuma plan your exit. Because in the past, I've worked in an organization where their interest is making profit. So all I have to do is to build a knowledge retention platform where we have detailed handover, we have SOP that makes it easy for people to leave and the next person to come in and take up the role, simplify the job as much as possible, because the organization is not interested in retaining any people, they just want to make money. So you can't save the organization when the leaders are not interested. You just have to build sanity around your workforce or your workforce planning in such a way that people can easily exit and the next person takes off. That's and become a regular customer in the market, job market. Sorry about that. That's my response.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other question? All right. Abiodun, please go ahead and ask your question. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, good evening, Ma.
Good evening.
Thank you for the very insightful session. I just want to get a clarification about your response to this last caller, that one should prepare your recruitment or the handing over structure in such a way that a new hire can set into the new position. So for a technical role where the kind of handing over thing you want to do, or the retention or learning, the handing over steps that you want to take is not something that is just anybody that can fit in. Is more technical role. For example, maybe a mechanical engineer, and you have somebody coming, maybe in the train they have somebody using a particular software, and if this new person is not so used to such a software, how do you make an arrangement to prepare the oncoming person? Because sometimes I feel if you have to save your talent by having to add some amount of money or improving your compensation to keep that talent, instead of having to lose it and then bringing in a new person and starting afresh to train, is it not better to look into how to improve what you have?
Okay. Like I mentioned, you're right. Research has always had it that it's cheaper to retain your staff than to work on replacement. That is standard. But the truth remains that If the business owner does not want to increase the salary, sis, what can you do? What can you do? So to answer your response to your question on tools, now my personality, because I remember deploying a digital tool, and then a few months after I deployed it, I left. But the tool has a knowledge management aspect of it, where I wrote everything on how to manage the platform. That is me. And in my next workplace, I made it mandatory for employees to give me their, not line managers, right? My first role when I joined that particular organization after I left that place because of my experience, give me what you do day to day on a daily basis. So it will be obvious that what is missing between what you're doing and the next person coming to take it is your intellect and how you manage the role. Do you get? So for the likes of software,
I get
there
you,
are
ma.
so you simplify the role in such a way that the difference between the person that is taking it and the person that is coming in is character, management style, soft skills, and not technical. That's just how I manage. I don't, when leaders, when business owner is not willing to pay more, I can't carry that on my shoulder. Mine is to make it easier for me to do. When you're coming in, I'll ask you if you've used the tool, and I'll go for the person that have used the tool and channel your onboarding to that particular knowledge management platform where you have to learn a lot about your role. And if I still have somebody that is still in the system before you join, I'll tag you as a body. You know what I mean? Body system. When someone is joining, you give mentorship. Yes,
ma.
So that's how I manage it. We cannot carry. All we do is to support the business because they said no, we can't manufacture or use our own salary to compensate that of the employer and colleagues to leave them, to stay with them. And most importantly, your relationship within that employee will go a long way to help the employee to save you stress and maybe document how these tools work, and then you keep it on the knowledge management platform. I hope I gave you a response. You can't get the money. You can't increase.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am.
All right. Any other question? Chinyere, okay. Hold on. Okay, but the organization is not ready. Yes, they are not ready. And let me tell us as HR professionals, nobody, if you're in the wrong organization, they will always see you as hire and fire. And now to maintain your sanity, have a pipeline to actually show, do the best you can do. Is there anything wrong? Advise, put it in record, document it that you've advised. Do the best you can do, but make sure that when you are leaving, every day you leave the organization, you keep the burden in the organization and keep moving. We cannot force business leaders to do what they don't want to do. So as much as possible, let's save our sanity. All right. No other question. In the absence of other question, can I leave? Give me thumbs up if I can leave. Thank you, Ibrahim. Thank you, Ibrahim. Thank you, everyone, for your time. You have a good night. Rest.
Thank you, Ma. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night. Bye.